You know, we tend to think of power as the ability to make these bold, sweeping changes, right? But what if I told you the real secret to holding on to power lies in doing the exact opposite? Today, we're going to dive into one of the most complex and honestly dangerous laws of power, the art of managing change without getting completely destroyed in the process.
And this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of the problem. Intellectually, on paper, yeah, we all agree. Change is good, progress is necessary. But on a gut level, we are creatures of comfort. We cling to what's familiar. So pushing too hard, too fast against that basic human instinct, well, it's just a recipe for disaster. It creates this friction that can literally burn the reformer to the ground.
So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll get into the psychology behind this paradox. Then, we'll look at a man who paid the ultimate price for rushing things, and we'll contrast him with a true master of disguised change. From there, we'll pull out the practical keys to power, and we'll wrap up with a final word on this very dangerous game.
Okay, let's start with this central paradox. The world can feel pretty chaotic, so what do? We build routines, we build habits. They make us feel safe, they give us comfort and predictability. So when a leader, even a well-intentioned one, comes in and starts tearing down all those familiar structures, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like a personal attack. And that anxiety, it will almost always boil over into resentment and eventually open rebellion. To really see this principle in action, we've got to go back in time to Tudor England and talk about the story of Thomas Cromwell. This was a brilliant guy. I mean, truly brilliant. He saw a path to give his king, Henry VIII, exactly what he wanted. But in doing so, he unleashed a storm of change so massive that it would end up consuming him entirely. Just look at the sheer speed and scope of the change here. This wasn't some slow, gradual shift. No, this was a top-down revolution. And it was done in just a few short years. Cromwell didn't just tweak the law. He attacked the very fabric of daily life. For centuries, people's lives, from birth to death, were guided by the rituals of the Catholic Church. And then, boom, suddenly their whole world is upside down. Churches are being demolished, familiar images are smashed, the monasteries that cared for the poor are just gone. It was a massive cultural shockwave.
And this timeline, wow, it just lays out the brutal consequences. His rise to power was absolutely meteoric, but look how quickly the backlash started. Within a single year of becoming the most powerful man in England, the country was in open revolt against him. By 1540, even the king was tired of all the chaos, and Cromwell, the great reformer, was sent to the executioner's block. And that crowd that cheered his death, they weren't just bloodthirsty. They were people who were relieved, finally, to see the source of all their anxiety get eliminated.
You see, Cromwell made himself the living, breathing symbol of change. So when that change created fear and poverty and confusion, all of that negative energy had one single, very convenient target. He became the scapegoat for every single problem his reforms caused. He was a lightning rod for the entire nation's discontent. All right, so that's what not to do. Now let's flip the script and look at a completely different approach. Fast forward a few centuries. Another leader, Mao Zedong, is facing an even bigger challenge, trying to impose the radical, frankly alien ideology of communism on China, one of the most deeply traditional societies on the planet. But unlike Cromwell, Mao understood a crucial rule. You don't fight the past, you use it.
This is just an absolutely brilliant strategy. I mean, look at this. Instead of presenting communism as some frightening break with everything people knew, Mao wrapped it up in the heroes and stories of China's own history. The revolution? Oh, that wasn't some new foreign concept. No, it was just like the noble struggle in that beloved old novel, The Water Margin. He wasn't some dictator, he was a modern version of the great strategist Zhuge Liang. He even took this controversial tyrannical emperor, Qin, a guy who was usually seen as a villain, and he reframed him as a necessary unifier who brought order out of chaos. Sound familiar? By framing his radical changes in these familiar terms, he made them feel legitimate, almost inevitable. He was co-opting the past to sell his vision of the future.
And that's really the core lesson from Mao's success. The past holds this immense authority in our minds. Things that have happened before just feel bigger, more real. To ignore that power is foolish. To fight it head-on is basically suicidal. The master strategist borrows that authority, borrows that legitimacy, and makes their own actions feel like they're just a continuation of a grand tradition, not some terrifying leap into the unknown.
So, we've seen the disaster and we've seen the masterpiece. How do we translate this into a practical strategy for ourselves? Let's break down the actual tactics for making change happen without provoking a full-blown rebellion.
Okay, here it is. This is the playbook. First, keep the appearance of the old. You know, a company might keep its old logo even while it's completely changing its business model. That's this principle in action. Second, actively reinterpret the past. Political campaigns do this all the time, right? Reframing a party's history to fit a new platform. Third, pay lip service. Think of a tech CEO praising the legacy of an industry they are actively trying to make obsolete. And finally, you gotta read the room. You have to know the zeitgeist. If your idea is just too radical for its time, it's gonna fail. So many failed startups were just great ideas that were 5 years too early.
And Machiavelli, of course, just nails it. This all comes down to managing perception. The actual nitty-gritty substance of the change is less important than how it feels to the people going through it. If you can keep up the appearance of continuity, you can get away with almost any reform in reality.
This image is the perfect metaphor for this law. Just think of humanity as a cat. It loves its routines, its familiar places, its warm spots in the sun. If you suddenly come in and rearrange all the furniture, what happens? The cat gets anxious, hostile. But if you do it slowly, maybe you leave a familiar blanket in its new spot, you can gently guide it through the change. You have to placate that inner creature of habit, even as you're innovating.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? The lesson of Law 45 isn't don't change things. I mean, change is often critical for survival. The lesson is that human nature has this powerful conservative streak. It's like an immune system that attacks innovations that feel too foreign or happen too fast. To succeed, the reformer has to be more than a reformer. They have to be a psychologist.
And we'll end with this sobering thought from Machiavelli. Trying to start a new order of things, it is the ultimate high-wire act. It's basically an open invitation for resistance and resentment. But by understanding that deep-seated human need for the familiar, and by cleverly cloaking the new in the garments of the old, a leader can navigate that danger and turn what would have been a revolt into a successful revolution.